Miles Morales is getting back in the web-slinging saddle. What'll happen next? Well, let's hop into the pages of Miles Morales Spider-Man issue number 1 from Saladin Ahmed and find out for ourselves, shall we? Alrighty then, so a good chunk of this first issue is really just catching up with Miles and seeing what he's been doing. He's still patrolling the streets as Spider-Man in between going to school, and in fact at school, the Vision Academy, he's been given a rather interesting assignment from one of his teachers, and that is to keep a journal. At first he's obstinate about the whole thing, but eventually Miles warms up to it. It's nice to be able to share his thoughts, even if it's just with himself on paper. The journal also serves as a nice little framing device, as well as offering up a chance for Miles to retell his own origin for anyone who is picking up this book for the very first time. And why yes, for all you Ultimate Universe fans out there wondering, they do not mention the Ultimate Universe. Miles simply states that he was bitten by a genetically altered spider. No, they don't mention where it's from. He hung out with Peter Parker, who eventually gave him the okay to tour around as a second Spider-Man. You know, if you listen carefully, I'm pretty sure you can hear Brian Michael Bendis weeping somewhere. Surprisingly, this first issue actually doesn't spend a lot of time on Miles Morales as a hero, more as a person, and we get to see the people who make up his life, from his parents, who are totally in on his double life as a superhero, to his friends and roommates at school. Judge, the other roommate, gets a lot more play in this issue than Gank, Miles' best friend. And hey, speaking of Gank, did he get cooler in between runs, or did he just hit puberty? He's got a little chin beard, a man bun, and oh god, did I just say man bun and cool in the same sentence? Excuse me for a minute, everyone, I have to wash my mouth out with fire. Lastly, we meet Miles' current love interest. Yes, much like Peter Parker before him, Miles goes through a lot of different girlfriends. This one is babysitting over the weekend and wants to know if Miles wants to tag along. Obviously, he wants some FaceTime with this girl to make a good impression, so he agrees. It's also around here too, the book takes a bit of a topical turn. As you may or may not know, Miles is half African American, half Hispanic. And while plenty of people in America and around the world are facing strife currently, the Hispanic community has gotten it real rough. In fact, to really highlight this, the young boy that Miles' girlfriend is looking after, Eduardo, had his father deported, and now his mother is fighting tooth and nail to try and keep them in the country. It's a very complicated, very adult issue, and something the younger Spider-Man is having a hard time grasping himself. It's one thing to beat up muggers and costumed criminals, but how do you deal with a thorny issue like this, especially when it affects so many people you know and love in your own life? Luckily though, Miles eventually does find some crazy costumed individuals to take out his frustration on. These guys look to be robbing a building, and at first glance it looks like they're receiving help from the Rhino. This leads to a big fight between Miles and Alexei, who shows his age right away by saying, "Hey, Spider-Man Jr., why don't you go home and play your Sega?" Seriously, Rhino, how old are you? Too old to be running around in an animal costume, that's for sure. Now, despite not being the brightest penny in the fountain, the Rhino has made a long career of fighting spider people, and because of that, a lot of Miles' tricks are old news to him. He gets wrapped up in webs, no problem, he can just break out. This means Miles is forced to dig deep into his own personal bag of tricks to pull out his unique camouflaging ability, as well as a well-timed venom blast to put the Rhino down. But wait, what a twist! Rhino actually wasn't with those other costumed guys robbing that place. In fact, those guys had a bunch of children with them. The Rhino's niece was kidnapped and he was looking to find her. And as the comic begins to wind down, we discover that Rhino's niece isn't the only one these guys have taken. They have Eduardo too, who quickly turns on Miles. And so that was Miles Morales Spider-Man issue number 1, everybody, and overall I thought it was pretty solid. Maybe not the slam dunk I was hoping for, but it does a good job reintroducing Miles and his supporting characters to people who may never have read him before. There's still the overarching problem of the Spectre left by the Ultimate Universe. Bendis has gone to go right for DC, and because of that, I doubt we'll ever hear about that universe ever again, even though for Miles that makes up a huge chunk of his own personal history, and without it, he seems kinda cheaper for it. Of course, I could be totally wrong. This is just issue 1, and there's no telling where this series could go. In fact, those tech goons looked a lot like the Maker, and wouldn't that be fun to see Miles versus the evil Ultimate Reed Richards? Saladin Ahmed enjoys a great reputation, and rightly so, as Marvel's ultimate modern-day fixer. He wrote probably one of the best Inhuman stories ever told in Black Bolt, and resurrected the Exiles to great acclaim. And a lot of the hallmarks of what made those stories so good are apparent here in this book. Issue 1 definitely definitely went for more of a slow burn, more personal approach, having to reintroduce all the supporting characters. Honestly, it reminded me very much of the first couple issues from Bendis' Ultimate run. Lastly, and this is probably going to sound like a pretty strange observation here, Ahmed seems to have altered the way Miles talks. Mainly, he seems to use more slang than he ever did before. This really isn't a criticism or a critique, it's just something I noticed, and something I wonder if we're going to keep seeing in the future. Ultimately, though, I would give this one a positive 7 out of 10, and I'm definitely interested enough to see where this book is going to go from here. Hey there everyone, it's your old pal Cave Joel again. I want to thank you so much for watching to the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed what you saw, and if you did, why not take a closer look at some of these other videos I have available from the channel. Then you can follow me on Twitter and Facebook at Cave Joel, so you're always up to speed on what I'm doing next. And hey, if you're in a supportive mood, why not check out my Patreon page? Patrons get exclusive access to videos and content before anyone else, and you can do so for as little as $1 a month. I would really appreciate it, and with that, I will be sure to be back again next time with even more great comic content that smacks of greatness. Bye-bye, everyone.